Okay, well, thank you for tuning into our STEM professional development webinar. Today we have Sarah Sevilla and Aaron Madrid. I'm Fedy. I'm going to go ahead and host the meeting for today. And we're going to start off by introducing ourselves, and we're going to mention our undergraduate major, any minor that we have, the community college and university which we transferred to, and what we're currently doing right now. So I can go ahead and start. My name is Fady. I got my Bachelor's of Science from UCLA in 2022, winter quarter. I was an MCDB major, so that stands for Molecular Cell and Developmental Biology. I attended Moore Park College for 2 years. During that time, I actually attended a few colleges. So I attended Moore Park, Ventura, and Oxnard, which we will definitely get to. As did my colleague Sarah. I actually met Sarah it was Oxnard College, correct, Sarah?
It was also a college physics class. Yeah.
Yeah, physics, and I think we also had an organic chemistry. I think we had a class at the Ventura campus as well. And we'll talk about the advantages of actually using Oxnard, Moore Park, and Ventura campuses to your advantage. And what I'm doing right now, currently, I'm a teaching assistant at UCLA. So for those that are maybe watching this video or unaware of what teaching assistants do, when you get to university, the class is no longer going to be run by exclusively the teacher. It's usually going to be the teacher and the teacher's helpers, essentially, the teaching assistants, and they're responsible for hosting discussion sections, grading papers, etc. I start medical school this upcoming fall, so I'm currently in my gap year. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Aaron.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Aaron Madrid. I got my bachelor's of science in computer science. I got it from CSUN just recently this year. Before CSUN, I went to Moore Park College and Ventura College and got my minors in psychology and computer science. Now, currently, I'm working for the U.S. Department of Defense as an ML AI, so machine learning and artificial intelligence software engineer. And yeah, I'm pretty much loving it there. I actually met Fedy through Moore Park, and I think we've become very, very good friends since then.
So, hi, everybody. I'm Sara Sevilla, and my undergraduate major was biology, Bachelor's of Science. And I graduated from UCLA class of 2022. I went to both Oxford and Ventura College. And right now, I'm currently a scribe at a nonprofit clinic. So, I'm serving my underserved community, which brings me a lot of solace and fulfillment as a Mexican American. And also, I'm a mentor and a tutor. And I'm in my gap year studying for the MCAT.
Great. Yeah, I remember the MCAT. I took that test 3 times. So we're just gonna hop right in. I'm gonna be leading the discussion, so we could go in any particular order. Sarah, if there's anything, Sarah or Aaron, if there's anything that you wish to add in on the spot, or you feel like you want to expand upon the question, these are just to guide our discussion. We hope that anybody who's listening, we could just enhance your perspective or maybe bring to mind an opportunity that you might have not considered in the past. So I'm going to first start off by mentioning what drew you to your major during undergrad, and when did you find out your major was right for you? I'm going to hand this question off to Sarah.
Okay, of course. So I always knew from a child that I wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't understand how to get to, be pre-med, and I didn't really have that guidance. But I found out, to go to medical school, I need all these prereqs, and I found out, a biology degree covers a lot of these prerequisites. And at first, that was my strategy, which is not, the best. But then I fell in love with biology, and I really want to have more of an understanding of what biology entails. And when I think about bio, I think like, okay, what's happening around the world ecologically, environmentally? How is this affecting humans? And how have I become a doctor? I need to understand this. I need to understand what affects the human body, what affects health. And that's why I delve into biology. And as an undergrad, I first wanted to do clinical research. I ended up doing ecological and environmental research, and I wanted to see how these factors, down the line affect us. Pollution, urbanization, all these other things. So that's why I left bio. I do not regret my major. It was an amazing experience. I took a plethora of classes from virology to developmental biology to mammalogy. So I feel that bio, although very general, was in a way concise. And I learned so much, and I feel very much prepared to apply everything that I learned down the line. And I think that when I looked at all these other majors, I was also interested in psychology. I felt like at the end of the day, bio was for me, and it was the best thing I could have done.
Great. Since we are on the topic of biology, I'll go ahead with the next one. Similar to Sarah, I did know that, or I had a vague idea that I wanted to go into medicine. So I did take biology prerequisites because I knew that these were all very essential courses to take if I wanted to go to medical school. So I wasn't 100% sure what I really wanted to do, but I really knew that I liked biology. When I was in high school, early high school, I remember learning about DNA replication, and I remember realizing that I really liked that type of biology, just the really tiny molecular aspects of biology and how the tiny things that happen in biology, they shape the bigger things like Sarah mentioned, like ecology, environmental, etc. So going into the rest of my community college career, I took those general bio courses to prepare me to transfer into the molecular bio track at UCLA. And since then, it's been super refreshing. I learned how to read research papers, which is really important for becoming a physician, becoming a scientist too. I'm sure Aaron would fully agree. I'm sure he's read many research papers too for computer science. So yeah, I just really took classes that I knew would benefit me in the long run towards my personal interests. So my personal interests were science, professional interests were medicine, and I think maybe one would say like philosophical interests too, because I found there to be a lot of unison between the humanities and the sciences and the social sciences.
I guess I'll continue that topic or that question. So initially, I come from a family of like engineers and nursing. So I had two road paths to go with at that point. I initially started off as a mechanical engineer over at Moore Park, but after like 2 years, I realized that I had a knacking for software development and coding. So I transitioned to a computer science roadmap. Uh, I realized that like a lot of the working opportunities and a lot of the research for computer science and software development was exponentially growing. So I wanted to be a part of the next big thing and to work on the next technologies out there. So with that, there's a lot of opportunities in software development, and it really opens up a lot of corridors for you to go through. Like Fedy said, I may be researching one thing, but the next thing I might be researching another thing. It's all these research documents with it. But yeah, I don't regret it, and I think I've learned a lot.
Great. We are actually curious. Jocelyn, feel free to just type in the chat or unmute your mic, what you're interested in. And if you're not so sure what you're interested in, that's totally fine as well. In the meantime, we'll move on to the next question. So, Aaron, I'm going to bounce this question off of you. What experiences during undergrad do you think led you where you are today? You briefly touched on this, that you came from a family of engineers and then you tried out Mech E and that didn't work for you. You could feel free to expand upon that. Maybe what really made you go towards your computer science oriented background. And you have a very, very unique position. I don't think I've ever met somebody who works for the DoD. So please mention, like, I'm sure you had a lot of internships that led you to that point. So any notable internships or volunteer experiences that you took that sort of enriched your academic experience?
Right. So when I started mechanical engineering, I actually took a intro to computer science and a CAD and MATLAB workshop or and classes. And from there, I realized that I was like, wow, this programming stuff, like I'm pretty decent at it, and I actually enjoy doing it. Um, So when I transitioned to university and went through the computer science route, I took on various internships. I interned for B&W of North America for 2 years. I was a software developer, a full stack software developer over there. And I then turned into project management from that point. After that, after I concluded that internship, I went on and became a guest researcher for the Office of Naval Research, and they do a lot of science experiments there and a lot of research involving software development, and not necessarily just software development, but there's all branches of STEM goes on through the Office of Naval Research in terms of international expansion when it comes to technological advancements, and domestically as well. I really realized I wanted to be a computer scientist when I started to see like the uptick and boom in technology advancements, from your Tesla to different social media platforms, and through the expansion of like artificial intelligence. So I really wanted to just follow that path.
You go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, so I'm trying to wonder where do I start. So I'm going to start community college and work my way up to when I went to UCLA. So at community college, I wanted to see what can I do to get volunteer experience or research experience. So what I first did was network with my professors and go into office hours, and they really were the ones that opened the doors for me. And also talking to colleagues and word of mouth. And during my community college experience, I got to volunteer at the chemistry lab, and I fell more in love with chemistry. And I also started my own club at Ventura College called Sisters in Science. And I really wanted to give back to my community and to women in STEM. And my club was open to anybody. And we, worked on, small little research projects. So get the ball rolling. We also contributed to our community by volunteering and working with children. And that was what I did during community college. Then, after when I transferred to UCLA, I really wanted to get into research, but it was during COVID. So it was very difficult. It was a lot of cold emailing to labs. And finally, when I was in person, I talked to one of my professors, Dr. Butrelli. He was an EEB professor at UCLA, and he taught evolution and ecology. And I told him, you know what, I really love your class. I started sending him some articles I read, and we had this conversation. And he said, you know what, you do really good in research. What do you think? Join my lab. And I told him, thank you. I've been wanting to join research for such a long time. And in that lab, I would extract tetrodotoxin from newts in the Santa Monica Mountains, and wanted to see evolutionary traces and how these, lizards have the same toxins, neurotoxins, as a pufferfish. And it had a lot to do with evolution and ancestry. And also at UCLA, I volunteered or did an honors course at an HIV lab where I worked in HIV research. And that really opened my eyes to um, public health and how far this research has gone, and how some people are immune to HIV. And it really opened my eyes to see the survivors and also appreciate people taking time out of their day to continue this research project that's been going on for 20 plus years. So that was my experience at UCLA. Once I graduated, I still did research from the Ecology and Evolutionary Lab. It was all remote. And now I decided that, when I come back home, I want to give back to community college students. And that's why I became part of MC2UCLA. And I wanted to be a mentor and show these, students that, hey, you could do it. You could graduate community college. You could transfer to the great university and get all these opportunities. And I also wanted to give back to our immigrant community, our community that are disadvantaged. And that's why I volunteer at a clinic where I also translate. And it feels really nice to see someone, ease into the clinic. First, they're nervous because they feel like there's this barrier. People don't know my language. And then I talk to them in Spanish, and then they kind of relax. And that is very fulfilling for me. So I've been all over the place, from community involvement to HIV research to ecology research. But, like I said, honestly, it's all about networking. it's about having confidence in yourself. And, if you have an idea, if you want to make a change in your community, you want to volunteer, don't wait for someone to hold your hand and do it. You got to do it for yourself. I felt like there had to be more of a push for women in STEM. I made my club, and I really wanted to show women and anybody of any gender that, hey, you're more than welcome and to find a safe space in STEM. So you could do anything, but just have the motivation and just keep persevering, you know. And everybody could back you up, but if you don't believe in yourself, then you can only go so far.
That was great, Sarah. I really liked what you said with all of that. That was very inspiring. Thanks for sharing your perspective as well, Erin. That was super enriching. Yeah, it seems like it's a really long road for everybody, and it's always overwhelming to hear people's stories and kind of where they got to where they are because they're telling you their story in maybe 30 seconds to 3 minutes. But in reality, this is stuff that takes 4 to 5 years, maybe sometimes 10 years to even develop, if you consider how much extra education comes with all of that. So, with that being said, I do actually want to bounce off of what Sarah was mentioning. Sarah mentioned a lot of research opportunities, and we both mentioned that we wanted to go to medical school. So I'm sure that there's some people watching today or some people watching in the future that are a bit curious about why somebody might want to go into research despite wanting to go into medical school, since medical school does seem more clinically related. So a big aspect of becoming a physician, of becoming a doctor, is having good research skills and knowing how to dissect research papers, know how to conduct your own research experiments. Because at the end of the day, a physician is a scientist who is a scientist for the people at the end of the day to immediately care for their health. So, with that in mind, do not completely exclude research if that is something that you might have not considered. But it's always a good idea to maybe start considering research because research is not always what we think of it to be. It's not always going to be, like you and with your little pipette tube, hunched behind a desk for hours. Research takes many shapes and forms. I did psychobiology research and I interacted with a lot of students, and that was my main duty as a researcher. So, with that little caveat, I will go into experiences during my undergraduate career, both clinically and non-clinically with research. Similar to Sarah, I did do research at UCLA. Sorry, I did research at UCLA and I did research at Moore Park College. When I did research at Moore Park College, I did that in my general chemistry honors class. That was super fun. There was an opportunity to conduct my own research assignment that could go on to the Honors Transfer Council of California. So I took that. So if that opportunity ever comes up in community college to do research, I fully vouch for you taking that opportunity because they don't usually come too often. Additionally, in community college, I was on Cope Health Scholars. So that was a patient-based learning program where I was able to directly interact with patients. And through directly interacting with patients, I was able to gain tons of clinical experience, tons of real life experience, how to deal with difficult situations, etc. I fully vouch for doing a program such as this if you want to go into medical school because patient experience and clinical experience is very important when it comes to medical school, whether that's dental school, medical school, PA school, nursing school, nurse practitioner school, etc. You need that patient experience. So I'd also like to talk about transitioning into UCLA. We have a student who messaged us a question. How does one maybe get research experiences when they are at UCLA, like such a huge university? Like Sarah mentioned, a lot of cold emails. Don't be afraid to reach out. We're going to get into this in a couple more minutes, which is networking and how to network within the field of STEM. I'm sure Aaron and Sarah can both share their experiences with networking, but I definitely did research during my time at UCLA, and this was all, quite frankly, through word of mouth. I cold emailed tons of professors. I never got a response from any of them, but my conversations with my colleagues landed me research opportunities. So that's going to be a pretty good caveat into our next point, which is how have you networked within your field? We're looking for tips for undergraduate students. And I also want to mention Myers-Briggs, the Myers-Briggs assessment after all of this. And I will mention why Myers-Briggs could be a helpful resource when navigating networking and how you could use it to your advantage. So I could pass this question on to Sarah or Aaron.
I can answer real quick. So networking is seems very simple, but it could also be very daunting, especially when you go from your community college to a big research institution like UCLA. And I did a lot of cold emailing, and do not feel bad if you do not get a response back. A lot of these labs are, they're very busy, working on publications, and or it's word of mouth, so they already have the staff that they need. So do not feel bad. It's not because you're doing anything bad or because you're not useful. Sometimes they're just PIs are very busy. So I totally agree with Fady when it comes to word of mouth. Talk to your friends at the university. Make make these connections with your colleagues. Do study groups, and within those study groups, you could say, "Hey, I'm really looking for clinical research." Some of them will be in clinical research. A lot of the people you meet at UCLA or any university are not transfers. They've been there for, since freshman year, so they've been in labs since sophomore year, and they could say, "Hey, I have a spot. Come in." And that could be your doorway into research, be it clinical or non-clinical. Or another thing that you could do is reach out to your professors. Although the class may be of, 300, 400 students, like my evolution class, email your professors, go to office hours so they know who you are. So you're not just another page on the roster. So they're like, oh, this is Sarah, this is Freddie, or this is Aaron. And then you tell them, I'm really interested in this. They might not be actively doing research, but they have a colleague that are. And then they could recommend you to that colleague. And next thing you know, you're in. So there's many ways and to get into research at an institution. You could also join clubs. I know there's a lot of pre-med clubs, a lot of other STEM related clubs in engineering at UCLA that have internships, that have research opportunities. So there's many ways of going about it, be it by your colleagues or your professors or clubs, or just you emailing these labs. And if you do cold email, research the lab, research what they're doing, read some publications so you could tell them, like, hey, I have an understanding of what you're doing, and I really want to join your lab because of, X, Y, and Z. So don't just email them saying, hey, I really need an opportunity here. More though, show them that you are capable and you are willing to put in the work and you love what they're doing. So just keep that in mind. Always research beforehand because some labs will interview you before you get the position just to see if you're a good fit or you know what you're talking about. They might ask, so what do you know about this topic? And if you didn't read about it in their paper or you haven't brushed upon it, then you're going to look like you don't know. And that doesn't mean you're dumb. It just means that you didn't prepare yourself. So always keep that in mind when going into a research lab.
Yeah, Sarah and Fetty had some pretty good points in terms of networking. I think networking is a super vital portion of our careers. I think the traditional road track that we have in the institution and in universities is we go to school and we go and study, and usually for the most part, if we're not doing collaborative group studies, we're doing it on our own. And so it doesn't necessarily teach us how to network outside of our own personal realms and our own personal endeavors. And, within the workforce, you kind of realize that a lot of it is teamwork based. A lot of it requires you to interact with the social community once you get out of school. Um, you're put in a place where you have to interact with clients, you have to interact with other researchers, you have to interact with upper management. So networking is a super vital thing. I actually, my opportunities that I've, received throughout my educational and professional career are because of networking. my internship with the Office of Naval Research, and actually even going into working for the Department of Defense is actually thanks to a friend that I met in Moore Park. He was VP of the Computer Science Club, Chris Lowenthal, and he was the one who guided me into that certain direction. I actually, with computer science, there's so many opportunities out there, and you don't really know what niche you want to go down through. But with a little bit push from your friends and really hearing what they're doing and seeing if that interests you is a great way. But the very forefront of it is you have to have good networking skills. I think for us STEM folks, I think some of us don't have the greatest networking skills, right? We're really brilliant individuals, both student and professionally, but I think sometimes some of us like lack in that networking realm. So that's a really big thing to work on.
Yeah, thank you. That's absolutely essential. In my opinion, networking. I would like to discuss what networking really entails because I think when a lot of people think of networking, they think of somebody like in a tuxedo with like a drink, like talking to a bunch of people and like getting all their business cards and like figuring things out. But that is not networking at all. Networking takes so many different shapes and forms. You don't have to be super extroverted to network. I've seen people who are very, very introverted network. I have a friend who's one of the most introverted people that I know, and the way that he networks is by hosting events and bringing his community together. And in that process, he meets other people. But he is more shy, more timid, but that's just one way that works with him. And that brings me to my next point, which is this Myers-Briggs test that I was taking. I think it's a very, very unique way to gain a new introspective assessment as to what your personality type is. For instance, when I took a Myers-Briggs test, I took an official one. I scored extremely high on the extroversion scale, and I think Aaron would also agree with me on that. Aaron and I are both very, very extroverted individuals. Whereas somebody like my partner, she is more introverted. So the way that she networks compared to the way that I network is very different. The way that I have networked in my field, I will speak first anecdotally how I have networked and how I have seen people that might not have the same personality type as myself, such as my friend who I previously mentioned, how they network and how they have become successful. So I talk to so many people. I just love talking to people. I love getting to know them. And I ask people questions. I try to figure things out about people just naturally, just because that's who I am. And it does come at an advantage where there will be sometimes opportunities that come up. For instance, all of my research opportunities have just purely been from networking. My friend Beta, I was one time walking with her from the gym and we were talking about our different research projects. And I mentioned one of the research projects that I did at Moore Park College, and she was mentioning the one that she was doing currently at UCLA. And I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. Could you get me in connection with your PI? And it just so happened to work out. So with networking also, there has to be a give and take. So that give is like what I'm giving is my time towards actually learning the material and volunteering for the lab, and I'm taking that opportunity to actually do that. So networking is usually going to be the most successful when it's a two-way street. You have an asset that you can provide somebody, whether that's like a cognitive aspect, emotional, a physical, etc., whatever you might label it as. In return for something else, you could consider it in that binary form if we break it down like networking professionally. But of course, it's very dynamic. My opportunities in as a phlebotomist, so my clinical experience has also come from networking. I was actually getting my blood drawn at the hospital, and I was just talking to the phlebotomist, and he said, "Hey, we actually have a position. So here, how about you talk to this guy, and maybe we can get something online for you." So that's a way that I pursue network is just by talking to others and really getting to know them. However, somebody maybe that's more introverted, I like to talk to a lot of people. There's some people that do really well getting to know one person slowly. I understand that not everybody is so eager to, spill the beans, have you say it, and just talk to everybody. And they more prefer to lean into the relationship slowly. So whether that's with one person or a very small group of people. And with that relationship, that person can get you connected with other people, or that person can get you connected with whatever they're working on. So this Myers-Briggs assessment, you could search it just on Google, search Myers-Briggs personality type score, and you could take this test, answer to the best of your ability, and it could give you some really cool insight into maybe some aspects of your personality that you might have not considered. Additionally, there's also a section that show what career options work best for that. I know that the person that is in this Zoom webinar, um, there is a class actually offered at UCLA called LS1, I think it's LS107, or that might be genetics. I'm not so sure, but it's
That's
called career.
genetics.
Yeah, okay. It starts with a one.
It,
It's
it's the
called
career planning one, career
yeah,
development. Yes.
career exploration in the life sciences. Daniel Aguilera, for anybody that's going to be watching this video on YouTube, hosts a class at Moore Park College as well. That's coming up, and it's also like a career exploration class. So I highly recommend that. And networking opportunities are discussed in that context as well. Okay, great. So those are some tips that we have for networking. Sarah or Aaron, do you guys want to add in anything?
Yeah, real quick. I feel like sometimes community college students, especially when I was at OC or VC, they thought that networking started when you go to your 4 year, right? And I remember when professor told me, no, networking starts right here in this office hours in this room. You're telling me about the class, you need help, I'm getting to know you. And even just by asking these questions, I already have a sense of who you are and I could vouch for you. And that really opened my mind to things. So networking doesn't start when you transfer, networking starts now. Um, and let me tell you how, networking with your professors now, it's going to help you down the line. Let's say scenario based, right? You're getting ready to transfer, you are in the UC application and it's already, you submitted it and it's January and you already know the universities you want to go to. But let's say you need financial aid or scholarships. You could apply to scholarship as a prospective transfer, but a lot of these scholarships will ask for letter recommendations. So having these relationships with your professors, you can, with all respect, ask them, hey, I really want to apply to the scholarship or this very prestigious club at this university that I'm applying to. May you please write me a letter of recommendation? So that is a way that networking and community college will get you far. And even, after you graduate, having these relationships with your professors, sometimes they say, hey, I know about a job opening in your field because a lot of these professors still work in their field. They not only teach. So you have these opportunities to come back to your community or give back. So networking doesn't start when you transfer, networking starts now. And it could be with your classmates, like but he was in Cope Scholars. Let's say you met him community college, he would have told you, hey, I'm doing this. It's really fulfilling. I love it. You should join. And that would have been, a networking experience. And of course, not everybody is extroverted. I very much am. I love to talk and, talk a lot, get to know people. And I have some friends just like Fady that are very introverted and they just had a really good relationship with one professor. And even that opened doors. So networking takes very different routes, but it does start now. And I would say don't wait, open yourself up a little and make that connection and show that you're you're interested in your field and you want to start now. And I think having a networking experience prior to transferring will really facilitate your route into university life and handling your classes and also extracurriculars and research. So Erin, what do you think?
No, I totally agree with what both of you guys said. I think really you don't necessarily have to be an extroverted individual, but I feel like you just need to find your passion in your career path and really be passionate about what you're doing in terms of your studies, because I feel like that even if you're not extroverted or you're not really out there as an individual, it'll really it'll really put you in an opportunity where, because you're passionate about a certain thing, you will find the knacking, and you'll really it'll put you in a situation where you're going to want to seek more and learn more opportunities that are out there. So yeah.
Awesome. So we're going to move on to our next question, which is, I think Sarah and I could actually answer this question duo, and then Aaron will answer this question on his own, just because of the huge discrepancy within our fields. What are different career paths and opportunities within your field? So I will first talk about the more academia-based opportunities, maybe more clinical opportunities, because Sarah, you are a general bio degree, correct?
Sorry, I was drinking water. Yes, I am a general bio degree, and since my degree is general, it opens so many doors to what
Mm,
I can do. Like I had an opportunity to work at HIV lab, after graduating. I turned it down though because I had other things I had to do. But then I was also in an ecology evolutionary bio lab, and I had friends that were doing, virology, and there's just so many different things you could do with bio. And one professor UCLA told me that I should apply to NASA. The NASA needs biologists, and that they would pay for my master's. So there's many different things you could go with bio, not just a pre-med track. You could also, do research. Bio is so general. If you want to do your master's in ecology or evolution, or you want to do your master's even in public health, you can. So you could do a lot with the biology degree. You could go more environmental. You could do more in terms of mammalogy. So there are many different things you could do with bio, not just, you know, go into medicine. I know a lot of friends that did a general bio degree with me, and they're not on the pre-med track. They just love research. They love reading papers, and they just love what they're doing. A lot of them went from general bio, and now they're doing research, and but Fady got his major in an MCDB. So there's so many different things you could do with a bio degree. You could stay your bachelor's, you could get your master's, or you could even get your doctorate in something that you're really passionate about. I, for one, know that if for whatever reason I, don't become a doctor and I want to still pursue bio, I definitely probably will get my master's in virology and get a doctorate in that because I love that so much. So there's many different things you could do with your degree. It's not just a one route type of thing. I know Freddie can agree with that. There's many different ways that you could continue on with, you know, a bio degree being general or being something more, minuscule like molecular or developmental biology.
yeah, just like as Sarah said, with a general bio degree, there's a lot of opportunities that you could take within the bio domain. But I also want to mention that there are other aspects that do use biology in a different light. For instance, a different career path or opportunity that I didn't know of was clinical research. There's a huge need for people with a background in science to go into more business oriented fields that could quite frankly be like learn on your own or an aspect of the job. So, for instance, there is a lot of overlap in clinical research with computer science and biology. I'm sure Aaron would like completely agree with this. So that's whether it's coding for a clinical pharma company or a business analytics person or even a data analytics person. And I know, oh, data analytics, that sounds so complicated. It's really not. It's something that could be very well taught. And I believe if you could get a bachelor's of science, you can learn data analytics. So don't limit yourself to what job you could do because of your degree. I personally think that a bachelor's not only gives you like a baseline level of foundation in that particular field, but it shows that you are a competent individual who's able to learn. So, with that in mind, don't limit yourself when it comes to choosing a job opportunity. Because I have some people that have gotten like a degree in math and they do something in the humanities, right? And like completely unrelated to it, or a degree in STEM and they do something that's not STEM at all. So, with that being said, different career paths or opportunities within my molecular biology field. If we only talk about just like paper to paper, what will actually a molecular biology like bachelor's of science would do. It's not much. So medical school is one of them, PA school, nursing school, anything health science related. A molecular biology degree really does help, but it's not that essential because once again, knowing the molecular foundations of disease helps, but it's not essential for treating the disease, right? Because at the end of the day, like the drug works how the drug works. Knowing the molecular pathways is really cool and all, and will make you a very knowledgeable physician and help with critical thinking, but it won't change how things work in that sense. But that being said, if you go into clinical research on the other end, so maybe like the benchtop clinical research, it will change because you can maybe manipulate these pathways. You could go into more computational based approaches. If you are getting like a degree in molecular biology, I highly recommend also going into computer science, maybe like computational systems biology. I do regret not learning more about computational systems biology because that is very revolutionary as a personal interest of mine, just learning programming, etc. So different career paths or opportunities with molecular biology. I would say medical school. You could go into academia, so research, bench research, or more literature review based research. And those are the main things that I could truly talk about. You could get a master's, so you could go into teaching if that's something that interests you, or a PhD, you could go into teaching in that sense as well.
I'm gonna branch off of what Sara and Fady mentioned. I feel like I connect with these two when it comes to that. But um, so with computer science, there's so many realms of it. There is computer engineering. There's also computer engineering and electronics. Computer science is kind of like the general, it's like the general bio of like computers. There's a lot of roadmaps that you could go down. And it really starts from when you find what you're really interested in through your college career. CS has you doing a lot of projects, so you kind of get like a little snippets of each different realm in terms of computer science. Because after college, you could go to the medical route. You could do biotech and do a lot of data analytics. Just like what Fedi mentioned, you could go down the entertainment path and see how systems work for the entertainment industry, whether it be physical systems like at Disneyland, or like cloud-based systems like Amazon and Netflix and all those. Or you could even go in through the defense tract, which is what I ended up going through. And within those different environments, there's sub environments, like if you want to do machine learning, if you want to do just straight software development on the front end side, so what the user sees, or the back end side, how the inner workings of the systems work. It really just requires you to find what you're really interested in. And like others have mentioned before, it really starts from the beginning. It really starts from when you realize that you want to do this certain career path, and then what do you want to specifically do. So there's so many routes in computer science for sure.
Awesome. Thanks for all of that, y'all. We have a question, which is, what are some unknown career opportunities one can take with your degree? I think we did a pretty good job at highlighting those. Sarah or Aaron, would you like to add in anything?
It's very random. The professor said I should apply to NASA because I always thought like you have to be an astrophysicist or engineer. And he's like, no, we need biologists. And I was like, are you sure? So these are things that really took me off guard. It was very much unknown to me. I assumed if I get my bio degree, I'll probably just work in research or, do academia, be a teacher. And I was like, okay, that's really cool. The military also needs biologists, so that's one thing I didn't know either. And I was like, why do they need biologists? Like, well, we just need to know what's in your mind. And I was like, okay, perfect. So there are many things that I had no idea as a biologist I could do. I also wasn't really aware of at the beginning of how, like Fady mentioned, like biology and like clinical experience go hand in hand because, you have scientists and then you have physicians putting their insight of what they're seeing day to day, in the clinic, in the hospital. So I didn't know about that either, but those are just some little tidbits that I found out at UCLA, which really took me off guard. But I find, very incredible that there's so much more that I could do than what I previously thought. Aaron or Fedi, um, what did you guys find out?
Yeah, I found out that there are so many jobs out there that you don't have to have every single box checked because they will teach you. So much of work is you actually learn as you go. And I'm sure Aaron is learning this right now. Like working for the Department of Defense is a big deal. And I'm sure that you're doing so many things that you didn't learn before. So it's almost like school 2.0. And I'm sure as a biologist for NASA, they will teach you how to think about these issues using your background with biology. So as for me, a molecular biology, what I found out was how I can understand like different therapies with this new lens on a much tinier scale so that way I can get a full comprehensive picture when I zoom out. And I think that's a really good caveat into how did you find your niche slash specialty within your field? And I'd love to ask Aaron about this because that is a very unique opportunity.
Yeah. So going finding my niche. So specifically what I do outside of, let's say, just my career is I've done research on like machine learning and artificial intelligence. And I know that sounds like scary for some folks because we don't want AI and ML taking over our lives or, going against us. But that's actually one of the reasons why I even went into it is if this is, artificial intelligence is designated as an existential, like a humanitarian existential issue, um, with the fears that involve around it. And I wanted to be a part of understanding how machine learning and artificial intelligence work and really not preventing it from expanding, but being able to control the situation and being able to control that advancement, right? So that's how I really got into my niche. I did a few projects from, data analytics with machine learning and AI to image recognition models. And that is what kind of got me in my career path with the DoD is they've hired me on as a software developer for machine learning and AI, just so that I can ensure the safety of everyone that's involved, right? Both internationally and domestically, and make sure that there are no harm as a result of MLAI. How about you, Sarah?
Currently, I'm just doing the MCAT. So I can't say a niche per se, but I will speak of when I was conducting research, just because I never knew I'd really get into environment or ecological factors in biology per se. It wasn't something I was interested in before I went to UCLA, and I ended up, loving it. It was very much my professor discussing how his lab also could be used, down the line to like make maybe medication or aid people, using these neurotoxins. And that really opened my mind. And he said, if you ever wanted to come back and do research, we could expand on this. So that was something that I never knew I could do per se. A lot of people tell me, why did you choose to, work, for how long in this type of research if you're, you want to be a physician? And I just said, you know what? I have to do what I'm passionate about. And I'm passionate about medicine, but I'm also passionate about this little thing in bio that has to do with evolution. So how did I really find it? It was my professor that really enlightened me to the possibilities that I shouldn't just like limit myself, right? I should also expand my knowledge and understanding before I go into medicine, because at the end of the line, that's going to make me a better physician, right? You have to be very well-rounded, and you can't just be, you know, so stuck on what you think your life should be like or how your career should be like. And you should open yourself up to all these different opportunities, even if it's a specialty that you never thought you'd get into, or a niche that is very, a spoken, like, Aaron's doing AI. Like, I find that amazing. Some people might be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. But, for him, it works out. I think that's great. Some people don't want to do the, research I was doing. Like, it's just what you're passionate about. So I say don't limit yourself. Um, Even if someone says don't do what you're doing, keep going. You're like, I'm passionate about this. And you know what? If you're passionate about it, then don't listen to anybody else. Keep doing what you want to do,
Really.
pursue it, and
Yes.
that's it.
Period.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously, sky is the limit. You will only go as far as that limitation that you put on yourself, and don't let anybody tell you what you're trying to achieve is like way too big. There's no way that you'll achieve it. Um, you know, I don't think I've seen a successful person ever, like have such a diminished view of what they were capable of doing. Some of the most successful people that I know have truly like went that extra mile. For example, I have a friend, he was 24 working for a construction company. His mom didn't have a job. His dad worked in construction, and that's what he was doing. His whole entire life was 9 to 5 construction, sleep, construction, and he hated it. And now he's working at one of the largest international investment banks in the world. So, food for thought, right? It took him 10 years to get there, and he's a little older, but he did it. And he always tells me, like, yeah, when you have something that you really want to strive towards, keep on fixating on that idea and write it down. I write down all of my ideas and what I want to get done, and it'll eventually come into fruition. So let's move on now to our next questions. We have a couple more questions, and then we will answer one of the questions that was posited in the chat, and then we will end it for the evening, for the day, the morning. So what does an average day working in your field look like? I guess I could talk about my position as a teaching assistant. Oh, that's something else. You could become a teaching assistant if you are a UCLA or university student after you graduate. Great gig, and I think it's also a fantastic opportunity to know if teaching is right for you, because teaching has so many benefits for whatever you do. So, Anne, can you actually lead us off with what does a day working in your field look like? Or maybe
Oh,
you can also generalize it. What does a day working in, if you were working for Amazon as a software engineer, maybe like BMW or maybe some other related but distant field?
right. So I think a lot of people forget that, like, for example, being an engineer, theoretically, it is a service form of industry. It's not service in the traditional sense that you're, working at your retail stores and whatnot, but we are servicing to clients. We are servicing for contractors and for the government, for example, with my end. If we were doing it in the whole realm of computer science and software development, our day to day is a lot of it requires in person and Zoom meetings, meeting with stakeholders, the people who are funding your project, who are funding your efforts. So it dives into a lot of business aspects of it too. Seeing what these clients want, seeing what the stakeholders need as a result of what you're doing. That's a part of my day to day. I meet with clients and I meet with our stakeholders to really map out the roadmap that we're doing. And then for the most part, we're just coding. and developing and doing a lot of improvements. A lot of our work is not necessarily outputting a product, but really maintaining what we've worked on. Because as we do a lot of agile development, and agile is in the sense that um, every week is going to be a different week. We don't have the same roadmaps, so usually some development groups, they have these things called sprint meetings, and it kind of it's a meeting where you're doing planning for the next 2 weeks or however long these sprints last, and it's constantly evolving. So um, my day to day actually changes a lot, or my week to week, and what I'm ending up on doing. I may be working on one part of the system, to the next week I'm working on a whole new different project. Um, it really is what the end users of our programs want and need. So it's constantly evolving. You're never having the same structure and the same work every day. So it gets exciting because one day you're working on something you've totally been good at, and then the next week you're learning something that just recently came out in terms of like technological advances. So super volatile, but super fun.
You can go ahead, Sarah.
So, since I did a lot of research remotely, my day to day looked like a lot of coding. And the thing is that no one held my hand for coding. I had to figure that out on my own. I remember my PI just held this in a little group. He's like, this is what R is, and this is what this is. We're like, okay. And next thing you know, he just threw us out and he's like, you know what? No one held my hand during my doctorate. This is your turn, sink or swim. And you know what? I could have panicked, but instead I said, a lot of people have done this before. I could do it too. So it was a lot of coding. It was a lot of literary review. And I kind of liked that my lab was, in a way, not all over the place, but it taught you how to multitask efficiently and how to be proficient in your work. I like having my deadlines. I like seeing what is happening with our results, and then I would input that data, code it, do a lot of literary reviews, see what other labs are doing, specifically what we're doing, and how that compares. How can we do this better? Can we find other forms of figuring out this process, right? So it was a lot of brainstorming, and it was a lot of teamwork, which I really loved. Most of the day also consisted in Zoom meetings, having just an open stage, present what you want to do in the lab and how that will benefit the lab, or how, is this out of the scope of our lab? Is that something we should put on the back burner? So that was really incredible. A lot of people in my lab didn't really like to do any wet lab work. I loved it. But after graduation, I decided to do more of the literary reviews. So I would be reading maybe up to 20 or 30 papers and then having to summarize that coherently to my PI and explain, like, this is the common ground of what is happening right now in the community. Um, I have this thing in mind that I would want to pursue. What do you think? And then we would go on to methods and how that could be successful or how that could be the downfall of experiment. So that was kind of like an everyday thing. I really enjoyed it. Some people didn't. Lab is not for everyone. Some people love a review. Some people like to do wet lab work. I like to do a little bit of everything. So it could be a little hectic, but I loved learning how to do new lab techniques. I also brought in what I learned from other labs into my lab and how that could, overall benefit what we were doing. So like Erin said, there's a lot of multifaceted ideas. So one day you're doing something that you're really good at, and the next day you're thrown into the waters and it's something completely new. But that's the beauty of it, right? Because not only are you working, but you're constantly learning and you're constantly expanding your knowledge in your field and other fields. And what more could you ask for? But that was literally, my everyday was never really a full-on schedule. Um, but besides that, I also tutored, and I tutored a lot of community college students, which, I love my students. And that was a lot of, doing like studying schedules, learning how to like kind of tone into your own self-confidence. And, it's a lot of mental health work that I do with students that are pursuing, higher academia. So that is a whole nother ball game. Um, but yeah, that's kind of my day to day.
Great. Thank you for that. So I will go ahead and say what an average day working as a teaching assistant looks like, what an average day maybe working as a medical student looks like. From all that I've read and heard, I have several friends in medical school right now because I'm sure there's a lot of people interested STEM-wise medical school and maybe what an average day as a PhD student or a master's student would look like. So an average day as a teaching assistant, it varies, but I will typically commute to UCLA on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And in that commute, I'll like listen to a podcast or something. I attend lecture, so I just sit in lecture. I sometimes will take notes on things I find interesting. I host my own office hours at different times. I try to meet my students' needs. And yeah, I'll just go open up my door, and sometimes I'll have a lot of students, sometimes I have zero students. So the workflow as a teaching assistant seriously varies. Quite frankly, as a teaching assistant, I don't work half of the hours that are actually like billed to me or like on paper because sometimes it is very, very chill and very mellow. But sometimes I'll work like double that. So when it comes to like around finals, I'll have to grade like a final, a midterm that they had like a couple weeks ago, like a quiz. I'll have to grade like four assignments, and sometimes I'm just sitting at my desk all day grading papers. Huge thing about being a teaching assistant is just the sheer number of papers you have to grade. You have to grade so much papers. So if you hate grading, don't become a teaching assistant because that is one of the core tenets of the job. It's just so much grading and it does take a lot of time and it's very mindful yet mindless work. It's really hard to go through those day in and day out after a while. But other than that, it's really fun. I sometimes will write midterms, I'll write quiz questions. I work with the professors to sort of integrate the course so it might be a little more practical, or maybe there might be questions that I don't think really assess a student's understanding as much, and debate that question with the professor just so we can improve the student's experience all in all. As for what a day working in medical school looks like, so as for my friends, it's all studying. You wake up, you probably work out, and then you go to class, you come home and studying. So do be prepared to study. Realistically, I'd say like 4 to 6 hours a day, probably 8 hours a day, closer to like your really big exams. So if you think of like, oh, I could study like 4 to 6 hours a day, no problem. You should be good. If you are getting a STEM degree, I sure know that Sarah can sit down and study for like 4 to 6 hours, no problem. So hopefully this is assuring to her. My friends are in medical school right now. They said the first month is for sure the hardest because it's just so much information and you have to learn how to learn all that new incoming information um, efficiently. One day of medical school's information is equivalent to a week of information in undergrad. So if you miss a day of studying in medical school, you missed a week of class. So do keep that in mind. It's very, very intense. You will always feel like you're behind, and that's just part of the process. So strengthening your mindfulness skills, meditating, taking care of your mental health is important because you will never feel like you're on top of what you need to be doing. You will always feel chronically behind in medical school, period. I've never heard of anybody ever say that medical school was easy or medical school was a breeze or they felt they were on top. And if anybody does say that, they are lying. So as for PhD is a little different. It's a lot of wet bench. So you're usually working with a PI. You're going to be doing a lot of little things here and there. So you will have to take classes on your respective field of interest. So these are very, very like upper division classes. I think these are 300 or 400 grade classes. So it's a lot more like synthesizing your own answers based off of your knowledge. You need to attend seminars, which is pretty fun. So you learn about your partners' research, people in your community's research, what's currently going on in your field, and you start working on like your own experimental design. You're usually in your first couple years of PhD rotating in different labs, or at least at UCLA, that's how it works from all of the doctorates that I've talked to. And you find kind of like settle in with your match. It's sort of like speed dating. You could think of it like that. So the lab that works with you, you stick with and you keep it going. So just remember with research, sometimes you'll be really interested in something, but that lab just might not be a good fit for you. And that's totally fine. But other than that, I noticed that doctorate school or PhD school, there's a lot of little things you have to do, like a huge volume of like little things. So you have to be a teaching assistant sometimes to get your stipend money. You have to attend class. You have to go to your lab like on off times in order to do experiments. Sometimes your experiments fail, and then you have to come in during like a holiday or something to do your experiments. So if you don't like research, don't get a PhD. So make sure you really, really love research. And that was actually why I'm not going into MD PhD or I'm not going into PhD. I did kind of go into UCLA with an open mind because I love research. I love the actual aspects of research, of biomedical research and all that fields and the theory behind it. But I absolutely hate doing research. I don't like the process of doing research, and that's totally fine. Once again, research takes all shapes and sizes. You don't have to be doing wet bench research for it to be research. My friend in medical school is analyzing patient cases, and that's research. So those are what days looking in those respective fields look like. So now on to our last and final question. We could keep this short. I'm sure we could say so much about this. What is a piece of advice you would share with undergraduates pursuing your field today? I will go ahead and start. Number one, relax. It's gonna be okay. I notice a lot of the sciences, especially the STEM fields, students may be a little more conscientious about how they go about figuring out their lives in the future, maybe a little more neurotic about their grades. But at the end of the day, it will work out and everything will be okay. I remember like all that stress that I experienced. There was some really healthy stress, but there was also a lot of stress that just was not that productive. So it's very hard to tell somebody, hey, just stop being stressed, but rather work on mental health practices to really know how to deal with that subliminal stress that feels like it never goes away and to make it your friend, as silly as that sounds, make stress your friend because stress is very, very productive when you can use that as like a catalyst and a fuel for your engine to get things done. And you could also use it as something to, push you towards higher grounds. But if you are experiencing like this stress and like chronic guilt, I always recommend get a therapist. There's zero shame in getting a therapist. Somebody like me, I come from a Coptic Egyptian, like male dominated background. Mental health doesn't exist. So I had to go that extra mile and really step out of my comfort zone, get a therapist, check up on my mental health. Because sometimes the greatest things to do, they're not the easiest and they do take a toll on your mental health. So please, please, please just take care of your brain. There's zero shame in getting a therapist, and you don't have to have everything around you burning for you to justify getting a therapist. Sometimes I'll see my therapist and we'll just chit chat, but it really goes such a long way. So that's the best piece of advice that I could give a student right now.
I definitely agree with you. I am a big mental health advocate just because being in the STEM field, like Fady said, you'll be around very neurotic students, very competitive students, and you can't help but feel like, am I behind? Am I not smart enough? And then imposter syndrome starts like creeping in, and that's the worst feeling. I've battled through imposter syndrome. And I sometimes feel like, oh, these accomplishments that I've done, they were given to me. I didn't work hard enough. And that's not true. Like, yeah, I had a great community supporting me and I worked, my butt off and it took time. And you just have to remind yourself that you're more than capable of achieving your goals and do not limit yourself. But the thing is, you have to believe in yourself and not compare yourself to others because you're on your own journey, as everyone is on their own journey. So if something worked for your friend, didn't work for you, that's fine. And don't see that as you failed. And you will have times of so much stress and anxiety because you didn't get that grade on that test and you studied so hard. That does not mean that you're not intelligent. That does not mean that you weren't motivated enough. It just happens, and we have to learn to take it with a grain of salt and move on. There will be other exams, there will be other classes, there will be other opportunities. If you didn't get that internship that you wrote, I don't know how many essays for you got your recommendation, it's okay. There will be more internships, but at the time when you get that rejection, yeah, it's gonna suck. You might feel really bad, but understand that these emotions are transient. Don't let them eat you up. Always know that, you could work hard, you could put all the work into your career, but do not lose yourself in the journey. Do not ever stop caring for yourself, taking mental health days, or having, that loss of confidence. The STEM field could be very rewarding and it could also be very isolating. It's up to you to make it, worthwhile. And, with that being said, I'm going to pass it on to Erin.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you guys. Mental health, being aware of that is a super important thing. I think we get way too lost in our like the end goal of our careers that too we sometimes get caught up in just that, and really, like I'd like to say that you have to take things day by day. That's all you can really do. Can't worry too much about the future, and you could only really remember about your past. But it's what happens today, what happens as you go through the days is what's super important. I've had friends who were so fixated on going to a certain corporate job or to a certain company that they were way too focused on how to achieve that, and really passed up on all these opportunities that were happening around them. A lot of these and it's not just career opportunities, just these life opportunities, right? Like a lot of people get so fixated on their education when there are other things that are like, people have their social events and people have their conventions for their careers, and a lot of people pass those up just because they're focused on how do I become the very best that I can be, when in reality, when you're taking things day by day, I think it summates to that you will become the best that you will be, as long as you're taking care of yourself as the days go by, both mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I think that that's what the best advice I can give is just be aware of those and just work on those.
Great. So we are going to go ahead and answer a question that we received. I would like Aaron and Sarah to definitely chime in on this. So the question is, I just wanted to ask about your transition to UCLA. For Aaron, just your transition to university, since Aaron goes to CSUN or went to CSUN. How did you get to the quarter system? What resources or opportunity did you use? Because I feel like there are a lot of resources, but it can be overwhelming. And I've never felt a question more.
I guess I'll go first for that. Well, so what resources that I really take in terms of transitioning from, or even transferring to from Moore Park to CSUN or just university in general is there are first and foremost, I think a lot of the clubs that were at Moore Park really helped me, especially in the realms of like my career, um, get insight on who the professors are in certain schools, how to even apply to those certain schools. Because in these clubs, you're going to have a lot of a range of people who have been there for 1 year, people who have been there for many of years, but are on their way to transferring. So really getting a chance to talk to those folks and really see how their whole application process and how their transition process is going. Was super helpful, and a few of the counselors for sure at Moore Park, basically in the, I think it was the, forgot, the main building where all the counselors were, getting a chance to actually talk to those folks and um, really going over, I think, was it DPR, Fedy? Whatever roadmap they had at Moore Park. It's been so many years, but going over that roadmap and really seeing what classes actually are needed to transfer. Because I remember taking a few classes that I did not really necessarily need to transfer, and that probably wasted a good semester or two of um, my transitional process. So utilizing the counselor resources at Moore Park and really um, utilizing the clubs for sure helped me transition financially and academically, and really getting in, and how should I write my essays, how should I write my paperwork, what classes, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, so sorry. I was gonna just bounce off what Aaron said. Make sure you understand assist.org. If you don't understand how to read assist.org and like the way it works, schedule a meeting with your counselor and just ask them, like, can you explain what assist.org is and how this works for any community college students? Because that is so essential. Please just double check what your counselors write. Because I will be 100% transparent. Some of my counselors gave me really bad advice that would have kept me in Moore Park for like 3 or 4 years. And I had some counselors look at it and be like, no, like this is ridiculous. You should not
Yeah.
do this. And they changed my schedule around. And I figured out how to use assist.org. So each time I was given a recommendation, I would make sure that that was conducive to my success.
Yeah, definitely to bounce off of that. Like I said, the counselors were good, but you have to make sure that you're checking in with, I believe in each department, there's probably like 5 different counselors. So go ahead and check in with all of them, just so you could have a very clear and sound roadmap.
I totally agree with both of you. I mean, I'm never gonna forget one time I went to a college and the counselor made it seem like I was not doing the right classes. So I'm like, ma'am, I assure you, I'm on the right path. And then she takes out her book and she's going like, little by little. And she's like, oh no, you need these courses. So I wasn't sure about that. And I made an appointment with the UCLA rep, and she said, you just need one more class and you're done. And I'm like, okay, perfect. So I totally agree with my colleagues. Assist.org is your best friend. Learn how to use it. It's not that hard. Also, let's say you're applying, I know that the UC application, the Cal State application are completely different, but the UC application, let's say you're like for me, I want to do bio, right? But many different universities have different requirements. So if you have a few universities that you will, your plan A, plan B, or plan C, make sure you do take those courses, even if it says like recommended, take that recommended as required because it seems like you went out of your way to be more competitive. Um, so yeah, I think just being knowledgeable of opportunities ahead of time before transferring really did help me. I, for one, would go to workshops that I was aware of, financial aid workshops. You see like application, like PIQ workshops. I asked a UC rep, can you read my essays? Can you give me pointers? Is this okay? Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to be only one person in a workshop, one person in a Zoom meeting. Ask those questions that are like killing you because you're not sure. Don't be embarrassed. Sometimes the question you have, another student has it. As cliche as it sounds, it always occurs. Um, Once I transferred to UCLA, I kind of kept that, work ethic. I feel like a lot of students will say the same things. They transfer to the university, they're very excited. You're finally going to learn more about your major. Um, Sometimes it may feel a little isolating, but I kept thinking, I have all these assignments to do. I'm going to work on them. And I kept having that like perseverance mentality. And I also kept in mind, like, okay, when I was at community college, I had, I think it's what, 18 weeks in a semester? I'm not sure. Well, you have a lot of weeks in a semester compared to a quarter, which is 10 weeks. and then your week of finals. So you have to keep in mind that you have to be on top of your things. For me, it was hard. It's not easy to, put some assignments to the back burner because next thing you know, it's week 3, week 4, and you have midterms. That's how it is at UCLA. Classes go by very fast. So take notes. There's like a program called Anki where you could do a lot of flashcards and that helps, recall. Um, some people like to talk out loud of what they learned in class. I like to do that. It really solidified information in my brain. So don't feel like the quarter system is going to be daunting. I think as long as you prepare yourself mentally, that's going to be faster and it's going to come at you a little bit quicker than it did community college. You should be fine. If you got in the university of your dreams, good job, great job. You're already in, you're already demonstrated that you could, thrive here. So good for you. Keep going, and you know what? If you don't do that great in a test, it's okay. There's many other classes, there's extra credit, there's assignments, don't worry about it. Um, but yeah, just keep that in mind. Quarter system is faster than a semester, but it doesn't mean that it's not doable. So, you know, take it one day at a time. You're gonna be okay.
Yeah, and just to finalize this last question, I want to provide some like study tips. Buy one of these. This thing right here, honestly got me through school. You'll be so surprised how much a timer helps, especially on days. We've all woken up, I'm sure, like very depressed and like it's just really hard to go through life. But having like a little notebook that you could write, like, hey, I just want to do 20 minutes of this assignment. I just want to do 20 minutes of this assignment, 30 minutes. And sometimes using a metric of time can really help get through those particularly challenging days. A timer helps you track how long it takes for you to study or work on a particular assignments. So that way you can be more efficient in structuring your day-to-day schedule. So for instance, if your course in quarter system has required readings, I would always put a timer and track. So here back to the neuroticism, the average amount of time it takes me to read one page. So I know depending on like how alert I am, how much I could read in between like meals or while I'm eating in order to know that I'm doing the best that I could do for that class or getting everything absolutely done for that class. So I definitely recommend doing that. Just have a timer, make that timer your best friend, invest in the timer. Get a little notebook like this and write down everything that you need to do. So like right here, I have like I need to pack, I need to grade papers, I need to do this thing, etc. And this has never really left me. This has just been a habit that I'm probably going to continue for the rest of my life. So stay organized like that. Brain dump is so crucial. So MC2UCLA, we have some resources. If any of you are interested, please email MC2UCLA@gmail.com on how to organize your day, organize your schedule. We have some professional resources that I created to help students track their goals, etc. But brain dumping really helps. So just write out everything that's on your mind. It could be like the most ridiculous stuff, like yeah, like I got into an argument with so-so, or like I have this huge test, or I'm in this current situation. And you'll be so surprised how that will just do wonders to your mental health. What I would do is I'd brain dump, go meditate, go live my life, and then sometimes like 24 hours later, I'll write a column and be like solutions, and I'll realize, wow, there's like so many solutions to my problems that I feel are never ending, right? Whether that's I have a bad grade, okay, like how about I study an extra hour per week or an extra hour per whatever, right? Figure out that time on your own because we each have distinct needs, but be really proactive in your academics, in your personal life. And I know that that's sometimes really hard, like when we're already struggling. So with that in mind, I really recommend looking up some meditations. I would always meditate before I started studying just to clear my mind. This thing right here, we're all addicted to our phones. Try to sleep with your phone outside of your room. It'll do so many wonders. In a week, you're going to start getting such more refreshing sleep, not looking at a screen right before you go to bed. Exercise, get sunlight right when you wake up. delay caffeine usage and at least an hour after you wake up to prevent crash, monitor your blood sugar, eat nutritious meals. And I personally believe that all of these really tiny things compound to make that transition easier. And I know that that might be a little bit unconventional instead of like, oh, just go to this organization or go to that. But like your personal lifestyle will really like play a role in your cognition and how you handle that stress and that transition to community college, to UCLA. It's a lot of information, it's a lot of work, but use Google Calendar to set your priorities and really like figure out what you need to absolutely get done today and what you can hold off for another day. Go to Club Rush. Club Rush is a huge thing. Find a club, find a community. I promise you that there is a community meant for you at university. You just have to look for it. It will not come looking for you. And I think that's something that is a huge slap in the face to a lot of students. In community college, it's so small, and the student body really, I don't know if you guys notice this, at least I noticed this discrepancy, Sarah and Aaron. You always hear like the student body wants your best interests in mind. The student body wants this. And like there's always like word around like how we want you to be best and like these are the opportunities that you could do. At university, that's not the case. It's just so big and vast. You need to find out those opportunities. So you need to like search for the UCLA newsletter. You need to subscribe to that. You need to contact your counselors. Your counselors are probably not going to contact you. Um, so be proactive. Ask people questions that you don't know. Ask your professors questions you don't know. Don't be afraid to ask questions in class. No such thing as a stupid question. As a TA, I always tell my students, if you asked a question, there's a really, really good chance 1 to 30 other people had that exact same question. Um, with that in mind, I hope that was helpful. And if there's any last minute things that Sarah, Aaron, or Jocelyn would even like to add, please go ahead.
I definitely agree with your statement. I feel like community colleges really cater to their students. University, you have to cater to them. It sounds really, kind of like sad, but that's the core reality of things. I had to figure out where my counseling unit was, and I was also part of UCLA honors. So I was like, do I go to my EEB counselor? Do I go to my honors counselor? I had to figure that out on my own. When it came to like, let's say my department's newsletter, I had to sign up for that to know when there's symposiums or there's other things. So you have to be the one reaching out because no one's going to grab your hand and take you to an organization to help you, you know. And it doesn't take much. It could be an email, it could be a call, it could be just walking around campus and asking people questions. Um, but you have to put in the work. It's not going to come to you. And that could also go into networking as well, right? You have to put in the work, whatever way suits your personality and your mental health better. So, yeah, when you go into the university, um, be proactive, like Fedy said. Go to your counselor. Make sure you're taking the right courses. If you want to do, honors at UCLA, you have a different set of counselors for that. There's many ways of fulfilling your honors requirements, and it could be just taking the honors courses or actually doing projects with your professors. And then you have to speak to those professors. You have to have them sign contracts with you, so it's a lot of productivity. And I feel like you really make your career, right? What you put into it is where you're going to get out of it. So if you go to UCLA with the mindset that you want to be proactive and you have a lot of these goals, if you start knocking on doors, windows, whatever, something will open. So just keep trying. Don't be afraid to ask for help. We're all human. None of us are perfect. And, we've all been there.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Aaron, for being our panelists for MC2UCLA STEM Social Science. Pardon me, MC2UCLA STEM Professional Development webinar.